Oh, there's a lot of opinions on this one. Hot and fast versus low and slow. What is the best way to cook your ribs? Today we're gonna find out by putting them head to head. Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and welcome to a video answering one of the questions I get asked all the time, which is, hey James, what's the best, low and slow or hot and fast when it comes to cooking the perfect baby back rib? And the same principle would apply if you're cooking St. Louis cut ribs as well. Now, one of the challenges is the internet is a wonderful place, but also a confusing place. And that's because it's home to such a variety of cookers. And there's general barbecue advice, which could apply to almost any cooker that you're using, but then there's also specific differences. And this is one of the cases where the advice that you might hear from Aaron Franklin, for example, you're using a couple 1,000-gallon drum offset smoker, doesn't necessarily apply to your ceramic Kamado style grill, whether it be a Kamado Joe, Big Green Egg, etc. And that's because there's different heat sources that all of these grills use. So some common elements would be conduction. That's a hot surface with meat sitting on that. We're not really doing that today. Our grids, don't get too hot. The second one is shared with all cookers, and that's convection, and that's how air moves through the grills. Now, offset smoker is moving the highest volume of air, and they get a great benefit and some bark from the amount of air, hot air, moving over your food at a very quick rate. Pellets try and simulate this with some forced induction, and so a fan is moving the air. And then Kamado Joe has the slow roller, which increases convection airflow 20 times more than sort of the previous generation, which didn't have the slow roller. So there's all some form of convection air going on. Where things really get different in the Kamado space is what ceramic does to our cooking. And so ceramic gets heat soaked and it adds this infrared radiant heat. And that's like, I wish it was today, much, much warmer, where if I was standing out in the sun and you could get a sunburn. That same extra energy source exists inside our Kamado. And this is where all that advice about low and slow or hot and fast can break down if you're applying a principle from another category of cooker that doesn't have the same categories of heat sources. And so over the last couple of years, I've been getting the best results with a hot and fast rib cook, but I've never done them side by side. So that's what we're doing today. We're gonna do the 3-2-1 method on the Kamado Joe Classic, and that'll take a total of 6 hours. And we're gonna do a hot and fast on the Kamado Joe Big Joe behind me for a total of 3 hours. We'll get both ribs to finish at the exact same time, around 6:30 tonight, and we'll do a good old-fashioned taste test and answer this question. On a Kamado style grill, how should you cook your ribs? Let's get started and build our fire. Okay, I've already got the inside of our Kamado Joe Classic 3 cleaned out, and I made a little space so there's no charcoal on the bottom, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and place our smoking wood. I'm going to use oak in both our Classic Joe as well as our Big Joe, and since we're only doing one rack of ribs, one piece of charcoal should be fine. Now that that's on the bottom, I'm just going to push some of the remaining coals around it so it's packed tightly, so as they begin to get hot and ignite, that'll cause that wood to smolder. And we'll go ahead and add some more charcoal. Now, just before I do that, I get asked this question all the time. In general, you want to stick to about a 95% charcoal, 5% wood in order to get nice clean smoke. If you start to go too much, let's go extreme, 50-50, you're going to have wood burning more than charcoal, and wood can be unpredictable depending on the airflow. It could either smolder out and give you bad smoke, or it can combust into flames and you get sort of skyrocketing temperatures and make it really hard to control your cook. So a nice ratio to sort of aim for visually, think about 90-10 to 95-5, even better if you can, for a wood to charcoal ratio. Let's go ahead and add some big block. Okay, so that should be more than enough charcoal for our 6-hour low and slow cook. And as you can tell, you can still see air holes all the way around in our basket. And we've been able to make a little mound just covering our piece of smoking wood. So let's go ahead and open our bottom draft door vent, which it is, and fire it up, start getting some heat. Okay, so now that we've got a fire started in the center of our Kamado Joe Classic 3, let's go ahead and drop the base of the slow roller in. And that's it. We're gonna let this build heat in this configuration before adding the top of the slow roller and any of our cooking grids. So just go ahead, open up the top dome and let that come up to temperature. And we're gonna wait, even though we're cooking between 225 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit today, we're gonna wait till we see that on the dome before starting to make any adjustments and closing this down. All right, so let's prep our ribs. So for these baby backs, we're just gonna get them out of the package, remove the membrane. So you wanna have everything handy to do that. So I've got a butter knife and some paper towel just to help sort of lift and peel that membrane. And then for seasoning, we're gonna keep it pretty simple. We're going to use some Diamond Kosher crystal salt as our base, and then just a house rub. And so this is the same house rub I use all the time, but it's mostly garlic, pepper, a little bit of onion, and paprika with some cayenne to give it a little kick. So let's go ahead, fast forward, and get these out of the package. Okay, so now that we got our ribs cleaned up, let's go ahead. We're just gonna hit them with a little bit of mustard for a binder, and then add our salt and our homemade rub. Okay, our grill's now reading 250 degrees. And we have heat in the dome, which tells me we're actually getting up to temperature. Earlier when I checked, this was still cold to the touch. So let's go ahead and close our top vent and put it down to about the first line on the control tower top. The bottom vent I'll put to one finger. And let's go ahead now and install the top of our slow roller as well as our divide and conquer rack. Okay, so first we'll install the base of the slow roller, then the plate. Next, we'll install the divide and conquer rack. Next, I'm going to install the X accessory ring, and I'm going to put that on the middle position, because what that will do is allow me to put in a drip tray, which will sit just like so. And that'll give us just a little bit of clearance from the top of the slow roller to help prevent any of those fat drippings from burning as soon as they hit our slow roller. Let's go ahead and install our grates. And now we'll close everything up with our vents where we think we'll need them and wait till the grill to stabilize around 225 degrees. All right, our grill's up to temperature. So let's go ahead and drop on our first rack. So it's just after 12:30 on Saturday here, local time. So the plan is 3 hours just like this in smoke, 2 hours in foil, and then 1 hour back on the grill with some barbecue sauce to help tack up. So that should get us right around dinner, around 6:30 tonight. The Big Joe setup, we're gonna do hot and fast. That'll cook in half the time, 3 hours. So what we'll do is we'll get started. Those will go on at 3:30 local time. Let's put these to bed. Okay, so now that we got our baby backs going on the 3-2-1 low and slow method on the Kamado Joe Classic, let's go ahead and build our fire on the Big Joe. And so I want to start this fire ahead of time and have it stable and holding temp at between 250 and 270 degrees Fahrenheit for 3:30 in the afternoon here local time, so we can go ahead and drop on our hot and fast ribs and have both ribs finish at the exact same time around 6:30 tonight. So let me bring the camera a little closer, and we're going to repeat the exact same setup in our Big Joe by adding a piece of oak, a little bit of extra charcoal to cover, light our fire with the base of the slow roller, and then wait till we see our target temp before we start installing the rest of our components and slowing things down. I'll bring the camera close so you can see the setup in fast forward. Okay, so now that we've got our little campfire going, let's go ahead and drop in the base of our slow roller. And just like on our Classic, we'll just leave it like this till we see our target temperature anywhere between 250 and 270 degrees. Bottom door is all the way open and our top vent is open, and we'll make some adjustments once we see 270. Okay, so our Big Joe is reading temperature and we are starting to get some nice heat in the dome. It still needs a little bit to go for this to actually be 270. Should feel a touch warmer, but we are getting close. So why don't we go ahead and repeat the process. We'll close our top vent. I'll adjust that in a second, as well as install the base of our slow roller and divide and conquer rack. which just like on the Classic, we'll drop the larger, well, I think this is 12 inch or 14. It's the largest one they make, which is just almost the size of the top of the slow roller. So we get pretty good coverage on this size. And then we'll install our cooking grids, close everything up, and adjust down to about 1/4 of an inch past the first line on our top vent and wait for everything to stabilize. Okay, it's 3:30. That means we have been at 3 hours at about 225 degrees on our Kamado Joe Classic. Our Big Joe has come up to temperature, so we've got some work to do. We're gonna throw on our second rack of ribs that'll have a 3-hour cook. So we're gonna do those at 2 hours at 270 degrees, unwrapped. The last hour, just a little bit less than an hour, we'll put them in foil, upside down, add a little bit of mayo on the bones and some apple cider vinegar into that pouch. And for our low and slow 3-2-1 ribs, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to put them in foil, but they're going to be bone side down, flesh side up, the opposite of our hot and fast setup. And we're also going to take the opportunity to add a little apple cider vinegar to that pouch. I'm not going to throw too many other tweaks at either one because I don't want the difference in the seasoning or the liquid that we use for braising in the pouch to add any difference in flavor. We're really just trying to get to the core of hot and fast versus low and slow and try and tell if there's any taste difference between the two methods themselves. So let me bring the camera a little closer. We'll prepare our ribs on the Classic and then throw our ribs on the Big Joe. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab our ribs. So I'm gonna place them in the exact same direction, front to back, as we did on the Classic, just like so. Middle of the grill. Looks good. Let's close it up and let those start smoking. All right, let's take our first peek at our Classic ribs. So those are looking good. Starting to get that rub sticking to the meat, which is what we want. So now let's go ahead, get our foil out. And I'll transfer these onto the foil. I'll take you fast forward for that. And we'll start to make our pouch to put some apple cider vinegar. Okay, so we've got our pouch. Just gonna take a little apple cider vinegar and pour that underneath. It'd be about the equivalent of a tablespoon or two. That's good, just enough to help braise and steam. So I folded over the back end and then double folded that, and I'll do the same here on the front. Double fold, tight, but not too tight that we poke the bones through the foil. And again, wrap over. And press tight. Get those back on and they'll stay like that for another 2 hours. Just make sure my thermometer probe doesn't poke a hole in the foil. Double check. We're good, no hole. So we are ready to go. See you in 2 hours. All right, it's 5:30 and if smells could talk, they'd say, "Ooh, that smells good." I wish I could share the aromas that are coming out of our two Kamados going on today, but we need to get to work instead of enjoying that moment. So what we're going to do now is we are going to put into foil upside down, bone side up, our hot and fast rack, slather a little bit of mayo on that, add some apple cider vinegar and put it back in the Joe. And we're going to go just a touch under an hour so that we can add some sauce at the end and get it to tack up. And then our low and slow ribs, they've just finishing up their 2-hour rest in the foil. So they're gonna come out and go back on the grill and get some sauce and spend the next hour there sort of drying out from being a boiled rib back into a smoked barbecue rib, and that sauce should get extra tacky. So let me bring the barbecue a little bit closer. We're gonna do the Big Joe hot and fast ribs first, and we'll move over and do our low and slow ones second. All right, so let's check him out. Whoo! I don't know if that's coming through on camera. Let me move the camera actually a little bit closer. One sec. There we go. I hope that's coming through. There is a noticeable difference in the color and the bark at 270 degrees from the ones that we're doing at 225. Now, we'll confirm everything with our taste test, but right now, these are looking really good. Let me put the camera back on the mount and we'll get these in foil. All right, now that we're done looking, let's go ahead get out our foil, grab our ribs, and we are going to place these again upside down. Okay, so the game plan here is just to take a little bit of real mayo, not mayonnaise or Miracle Whip, but real mayonnaise, and we're just gonna put a strip of this down the bones. You can use butter if you like. All we're really doing is adding some fat that will melt and continue to hydrate our ribs. But butter works just as well. It's just a little extra work than a little squirt. So let's do that. Preferably a full bottle next time. And just like before, what we'll do is we'll start our wrap just to be a little bit of a boat. And then we will put in a little bit of, again, the same apple cider vinegar right on the bottom. Again, about another tablespoon, that looks good. And we'll wrap this back up, put it on the same orientation that it is, meat side down, bone side up, on our Big Joe for our hot and fast rib. See that in an hour. All right, our classic has been steady Eddie all afternoon here, but let's go ahead now, open these up. Oh, I'm greeted with some nice aroma there. But again, that bark is not looking as good, but that's all right. We'll go ahead and see if we can't firm it up now in the next hour. All right, so let's flip these over and go ahead and hit them with some barbecue sauce, and then we'll do the presentation side last. Okay, those look good to me. Let's close it back up and give those an hour. All right, our hour is nearly up, so we're getting really close to that 6:30 mark. So it is time to pull our hot and fast ribs out of the foil, give them some sauce just so they have a few minutes to tack up. We'll take another look at our low and slow ones, see if we need any more sauce, and they'll both be ready to finish at the exact same time. Let me move the camera a little closer, and we'll get saucing up our hot and fast ribs. So we're getting some bone pull back here. So what I'm gonna do with any of that leftover mayo that didn't melt and go into our meat, I'm just gonna brush that off. But you can see all that liquid there just running on the bones. That's some of that melted mayo, which has just been helping moisten the bottom of our ribs here, which has me excited. Let's go ahead and drop on some sauce. Okay, let's sauce our presentation side, which is looking really good. All right, so they'll get the last 10 minutes just like that to help tack up our sauce. Let's go take a look on our low and slow ribs. Oh, these are looking good. That has tacked up really nice. You know, I was actually a little bit worried about these ones earlier based on the look, but now I'm not so sure. That's got some really nice mahogany color. Getting some great bone pullback. Just so the sauce doesn't throw us, I'm just hitting it with a touch more, just so that the finish on your mouth is pretty comparable between the two. And then we'll really be tasting for the rib, smoke, anything else that we can pick up to help separate these two. But I'm pretty excited about this test. All right, it's time to get these off. These are our hot and fast ribs going on the board. Let's grab the others. And let's grab our low and slow. So I'm going to get these in and cut them up, but just before they cool off, let's go ahead and take a look and see if we can see any difference between our two styles. And let's do, so these are hot and fast, these are low and slow. So looking at our low and slow, definitely got a mild smoke ring I can see all the way around. They look pretty good. And our hot and fast ribs, I don't know if that's coming through on camera. Those actually look to have a bit more of a pronounced smoke ring. Yeah, definitely. So let's go see if there's a difference in the taste. But so far, really close on the outside, The sauce on this one a little redder with that extra hour, but the smoke ring definitely looks better on hot and fast. Let's go ahead, I'll cut some up, rejoin you in a minute for a taste test. All right, I've kept these in order of the grill that they came off. So to my left is the classic, which is our low and slow. My right is the Big Joe. Let's go ahead and start with our low and slow rib. This is a really good rib. Still bite through, didn't fall off, but getting very close to fall off on the bone. In terms of the flavor, I'm not getting a lot of smoke. I don't know if that's related to the smoke ring or the lack thereof at the lower and slower temperature. I do have a thought on that. I'll share once we taste the other one and see, but let's go ahead. Let's get another bite, make sure that's not an anomaly. This is so fun. I get to taste ribs for you guys. This is awesome. All right, let's go for our hot and fast rib. Half the time will be half as good. As good? I don't know, we'll find out. Don't know if you can see a bit of the smoke ring on this one again. Let's go for a bite. There's a lot of difference. So, first difference, this one definitely has a touch more bite to it. So I can get a more well-defined bite without it just feeling like it'll slide right off the bone. It's not tough, just I think actually a preferred bite for me in terms of my level of doneness. Let's get another bite. I'm getting a different flavor too. One sec. Okay, so that different flavor, it's the smoke. I can taste the smoke on our hot and fast rib, whereas our other rib, while tender, it tastes a little bit more like a boiled rib. And that makes sense because it spent 2 out of the 6 hours in foil with some braising liquid. And it's not really feeling as much as if it was cooked on the barbecue as our hot and fast rib. And this is one of those areas where, depending on the cooker that you're using, the flavor can really change. A Kamado style grill holds so much heat in the ceramic that it actually doesn't do well with very low air situations. I spent most of my first 10 years trying to chase holding that 200 degrees Fahrenheit for briskets. Not only is it very difficult to do, I actually don't find the food taste as good. A small fire burning hotter usually means you end up in the 250 plus range before you start to get the full effect of a clean burning fire, as well as the slow roller. I've done a brisket low and slow on the Big Joe around 225 and one the same temperature that we use today, hotter and faster, 270 degrees. And the smoke ring and the taste was much, much better at 270 degrees. And so whether it's been ribs or brisket, I've just been finding this is the perfect temperature. But speaking of brisket and pulled pork, I've never done them side by side. So make sure you're subscribed to catch a future video, because I'm going to be cooking a brisket along with some pork butts, doing the exact same test to find out if our meat, depending on the type of meat, is any different, whether it's cooked low and slow or hot and fast. So make sure you're subscribed with the notification bell on to catch that video when it's released. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please let YouTube know by smashing that like button, and let me know by hitting subscribe to catch future videos. Until next time, I'm James from Smokin' Dad Barbecue, signing off, and remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.